Who did you really write this for?
So, like I said, I've invested in tons of 70 plus startups at this point. I've mentored hundreds, if not thousands at this point. So the book was a way to get all that information, all that knowledge, all that advice out there even more broadly. So at the highest level, it's for anyone who is currently starting a startup, thinking about starting a startup. Maybe they're working in a property management company or at a large GC, and they're thinking like, this is a huge painful problem for me. I think I have no idea what it's like to actually start a startup. That's who it's for.
Great. You've seen hundreds of founders stumble and succeed. What patterns keep repeating? How does the Entrepreneur's Odyssey framework help founders avoid these traps, cut through the noise?
Everything matters. And the other is there's one thing that matters more than everything else, right? That's like economists. You ask an economist, you got three. On the other hand, you got three hands among two economists. But they actually work together. So what I talk about in the book is one of these super light versions. You probably could have saved a lot of money had you used one of these techniques. You take out basically like, an index card. And on the index card, you sketch out each of the screens of your app. And you then, you prime the person you're talking to. Listen, Reuben, this is going to simulate you actually interacting with the app. So I'm not going to be there to tell you what to do. I want to actually see how you interact with it, so I know if it's valuable, if it makes sense. You can do this later stage for UI testing before you program, or even from the very beginning to test the concept. So the only thing I ask of you, Reuben, is the stuff that's going on up here, just verbalize it. Think it out loud. But like, you want to press a button, touch the index card, right? That's all it is. Don't ask me questions. I'm not here. So he goes through this with one of his target customers using this index card mock-up of his site, and because it's a book, we skipped a whole lot of fumbling around with it. That didn't work.
So let's say you get to the point, you nail that. What's next?
Okay. So we're working our way through the deck, right? So that if you've done that right, you've got a good chunk of your problem and your solution right there. Now you still need to quantify it, right? It doesn't do any good if it's kind of a niche problem. So I say in the problem, there's like 3 dimensions to the problem. Is it very painful, right? We're talking about, I just hit my thumb with a hammer, not a hangnail type. People don't really care that much hangnail. They don't pay for like minor pain. Number 2, is it widespread? And number 3, does it happen frequently? You can do it if it's 2 of them and it's really big on the other 2, but ideally you're looking for a problem that's painful on all 3, and you want to be able to quantify those in your problems. If you don't have 2 very strong or all 3 of those, your problem slide fails. I don't need to read the rest of your deck. So again, it's a link in the chain.
Top 5 healthcare company. I took the East River out of their basement after Superstorm Sandy. I called the guy up. I said, listen, can I sit down with you and your team and just show you what's on my napkins and what's on my placemats that I've, put together? Well, I'll make it prettier. I'd like to get some feedback. And what was really eye-opening to me is he pulls me aside. I can't say the name, obviously, because they're now a customer, believe it or not. But he did pull me aside and said, what you're thinking about is the future. If they're thinking about it and they're already looking at it and they've got this, the answers are coming off, that there's got to be like 8, if not 20 other guys out there building what I'm going to build right now, and already thinking about it. It's in some garage, and then it becomes, anyway, so that's part of the nervousness that I had, which I really needed to get in touch with someone like yourself. And I think if I think about the best part of the Dream whole thing is you put me in front of like 35 buyers from multifamily to industrial to construction to engineering. It was such an important stage for us. And, talk about that a little bit more, if you would. What was the genesis of that? How did you kind of come up with that? I do think we got the most customer immersions, or I told we broke a record, interestingly enough, but we learned a lot.
So one of the things that was pretty eye-opening was the ability to put you in front of everything from like general contractors who were looking at this as a tool to like hand over the building to the developers, which was a use case that you hadn't really thought about. So the interesting thing for us as investors, and the reason the Dream program was designed the way it was, is we could live with you for a couple of months, put you in front of customers and be a fly on the wall and watch when they leaned forward, what they got excited about. And you were in an interesting position where you had some really good responses from a lot of different sectors. So you actually had to pick which one of them you wanted to do first. What was going to be part of your go-to-market, like the thin end of the wedge, which is another thing that a lot of startups get wrong. What they don't realize about the go-to-market is it's not just, okay, this is how I'm going to reach my customers. It's actually three pieces. It's who am I going after first, right? This is my total market, but there's somebody within my market that I want to hit first, either because the pain is strongest for them, or maybe I have the best connections to them, or maybe they just have less tying themselves to the old ways, right? They don't have a prior software package they're using, so it's a green field for them. Whatever it is, there's a reason you're going after them first. And then, who they are, why they're first. And then you tell me how you're going after them. So you were in that, I have all these opportunities. They're all part of my total addressable market. Which one of them am I going to go after first? Which is a different problem than a lot of startups have. If there is like a phase change, something new comes, right? AI becomes commercially widely available for everyone to apply at a low cost. Before that, blockchain vision or speech to text or any one of these technologies that suddenly went from being very rare and hard to do, and now everyone can apply it, like that's a discontinuity. That's a big change. Or it could also be regulation. And the moment something becomes all of a sudden that clicks, I've had this problem I wanted to solve forever. Now with blockchain, I can do it in a way that I could never have done it with a distributed ledger. With Gen AI, I can do stuff that I could never have done with more structured SQL query. And all of a sudden, like the problem, which was painful, widespread, and frequent, but insoluble, becomes soluble. So once it becomes soluble, everyone rushes. If there's no why now within the recent path, and how recent depends on what stage you're at, it could be a year or two, if it's further along, whatever. But if there's no why now at the right point in time, one of two things is, number one, there are tons of people ahead of you, and then you're screwed. Now, as an investor who's deep in an industry, I usually know the competitive space. So I can usually point to it and tell you, what about them? What about them? What about them? When I was a generalist, I didn't know all spaces. So if there was no why now, that was my cue that I need to go deep in the competition slide and really understand it, or just probe them on the why now. If there's no answer, walk away, right? Again, the other thing that's possibly true, either there's tons of startups out there that are way ahead of you, I can find them, or they're none. And what that usually means is that there's a lot of dead startups that tried it and failed. And that means that fundamentally at the end of the day, it's not something market wanted. Now, occasionally, like once in a blue moon, there's no why now and no one ever thought of it before, but that's a tough argument. If you're coming up there and telling me, listen, I know it's been 5 years, people could have done it, but everyone else that does it is a moron, they didn't see this solution, whatever, you're trying to argue to me, I know why every single other startup before me failed, and I'm going to do something meaning different. The difference is, from a VC's perspective, between being too early and wrong, not a damn thing. Our investors don't care. It's a fail. Right? So it doesn't make a difference for us. But that's kind of a special case of the why now, where I can't point to the why now because it hadn't happened. That's equally wrong. Like if I was trying to do something that required AI tools that are just not here yet. I'll give you a personal example, going way back into the dawn of time. In the year 2000, there was a website called IC3D, I, the letters C, I and C, and the letters 3D. And the idea behind it was you could send them your favorite pair of pants, your favorite jeans that fit you perfect, and then they would cut anything to match. Like if you wanted like crushed red velvet pants with brass rivets and only one back pocket on the left cheek, like they would do that. But they would do it to match that style. So you had like the perfect anything. So I went on the site and I was thinking, oh, that's kind of cool. Let's do that. By the way, I wasn't looking for red velvet, but they had flash.
Oh, it was quite a visual.
Thank you. No, I got the leather pants, cut Rockstar, but that's a different story. But I went onto the website and it was heavy on flash because back then, like that was the best technology. People were on dial and it kept crashing, just kept crashing. Now the company didn't succeed because they were too early. The technology wasn't there to support it yet. Funny story though, as I'm about to close it and quit out, I'm like, okay, I can't get it. I noticed the address of the company is in the same building as my first startup. So I walked downstairs, knocked on the door, and like, hey guys, just want you to know that your site keeps crashing. And like Flash, we're working on figuring out how to do that a little lighter for dial-up. And like, what were you trying to buy? I'm like, well, I wanted this. Like, well, come on in, we'll measure you. So they ended up measuring me and I ordered it and I picked it up old school.
Old school. Okay. I find myself selling into old school still today a lot, which is fun because you talked a little bit about earlier, like, where do you focus? It's like everybody seems to be at a different level of the maturity, the tech maturity curve, so part of the screening criteria has to be, where are these guys? Are we going to bring them from a 2 to a 6? Are we going to try and bring them from an 8 to a 9? Like, that's not question number one. Can you find clusters of people who are kind of hovering around that 2 to 4 phase, and you can help leapfrog them. Otherwise, if you're going to go upscale, you better be able to swap out their whole legacy environment and bring it into your environment. It's a whole onboarding lift. So there's a lot of stuff to unpack there. One last question on the kind of the dream it / venture cap kind of world. For the founders listening, how should a founder decide whether to join an accelerator at all? You talked about me, I was already kind of established, maybe there's other people who are not, so when should they look to make that move? When is that a very, very important stepping stone for them?
So, it depends on the type of accelerator, of which there's now thousands, and it depends on the type of company. One thing people hate about VCs is the answer always starts with, but it's legit. So, if you're an experienced founder, you've done it before, you don't need the earliest stage accelerators. You've got all the basic skill sets that you need.
What is that, like the Y Combinator?
Yeah, I mean, Y Combinator has like an awesome network. Actually, let me take it back. I'll illustrate it with part of the book, right? So one of the hardest things for me when I decided to write the book was I wanted the book to be a story, right? I didn't want it to be two guys looking at a pitch deck in a conference room at WeWork Summit. So I tried to embed these lessons which in actual narrative form. So when I talk about the revenue model, it's actually the founder and his son on the subway, and his son's like, oh my God, if I owned the subway, I'd be rich. And I was like, why? Does it work? And he's like, well, for the same $2.90, we can go 4 stops to your school or all the way to Coney Island. He goes, Dad, that's crazy. You got to pay by the stop. They end up going through a bunch of different revenues that way. The chapter that talks about an accelerator, when the founder gets an offer to join an accelerator, he's actually sparring at, in karate, in his martial arts studio. And he's trying to figure out, does he want to go to an accelerator or not? And it occurs to him, the decision about whether or not to join an accelerator and which one is kind of parallel to the decision process he went through when he was thinking about, which dojo he wants. So he breaks it down, and for him, it was why do you want to join the dojo in the beginning, to begin with? So some people come for the fitness. Some people come to actually be able to defend themselves. Some people are doing it because it's kind of social, so all those things. And maybe if you're doing it for the balance, it's not just the cardio, it's more about the balance and keeping you moving. So with an accelerator, it's actually pretty similar in many ways. Sometimes you don't know what you're doing. You're really early on, and you know what you're aware that there's lots of things that you don't even know that you don't. So you can get the basic start of blocking and tackling. Other people are I kind of got that. I'm okay with that, but I need customers. Right. And then others might say I'm really good at sales. I got customers. I know the blocking and tackling, but I don't know anything about raising money. Right. So depending on what you're looking for, and you may be looking for all three, you can kind of get a sense of which which accelerator you want to join. So DreamIt in particular, the second iteration of DreamIt when you join, and Second Century Ventures, they have a program called Reach, which is also in the prop tech space. They're very focused on that, the middle one, which is finding customers. They generally tend to deal with later stage. DreamIt did, Second Century does now. Later stage, meaning, post-seed, they've got some traction already. The kind of the stuff that they needed to know about building a startup, they've learned the hard way already at this point. So really what they're focused on is how do I scale from a couple of hundred thousand ARR to $1 million, $2 million, $3 million and raise a bigger round. So if that's where you are, a program like that makes sense. But the super early stage programs, Y Combinator possibly included, don't make sense. Right? And then you can look at other things do you need a soft style like judo? Do you need a hard style like Shotokan? Right? Well, that depends. Am I B2B or P2C perhaps, right? So it makes sense, or focus on my industry or not. And then there's a whole discussion of when he went in there were a lot of martial arts forms that feel very strongly about, get belts, different colored belts and competitions, and others that don't really care. For instance, I do some Krav Maga on the side, which, by the way, if you've never done any martial arts before, that's a tough because it kind of assumes you know certain things. It's an overlay.
4 years Krav Maga.
Yeah, so you get it, right? The guy's he's I want you to keep your hands up when you punch, right? But he never actually went through the mechanics of counter rotating. So I had Shotokan before, so it helped. Otherwise I don't know if I would have done it at all. But Krav doesn't do belts, right? Maybe somewhere they do, but they don't care about it at all. So that became in his mind thinking about, well, how would I ask an accelerator to quantify their results? And it's brutally hard to do that. But just asking that question around the dimension that matters to you sparks the kind of at least qualitative discussion that you want. So for you, Reuben, you were at a point where you thought you needed sales. You actually needed to verify which segment was going to be your best go-to-market and sales into that. So the kind of questions you could have asked were okay, you have these customer sprints. On average, how many introductions do you make during this 2-week period to potential customers? Maybe how many of them become sales? And we should at very least be able to quantify the number of introductions, which I think we did. The actual number of sales is super hard to quantify, but a year or two before. It could take 6 months to a year before they actually become customers, but at least that's a good conversation to have with a potential accelerator.
You should know, we came out of that some good validation. Commercial Class A was going to be a good place for us. And as you know, not naming names, we had some really special Commercial Class A going into it. And because of the DreamIt meetings that we had with others, we got more pretty quickly. COVID killed it, right? Okay. Literally 5 months later, these places were ghost towns and all new concepts or new things. This was just blocking and tackling in the buildings right now and trying to figure out when people are going to come back and how to bring our expense base down. There was no one to play with new tools. Mm-hmm. We almost went under, but we then said we went back to let's go back through all these customer immersions and let's see, is there a pivot here? And because of that, we really were able to make a pivot. It took us 6 months to get people's attention. But now we're back with commercial. It's because the commercials come back and become more stable.
COVID is a great example of a neither technical nor regulatory why now. Because with COVID, one of the things that happened was it redefined the expectations for remote work. Now it depends, different states, red states, it's screw that, get back into the office already. But in a lot of the other bluer states, it's become kind of the new normal in a lot of industries where you're going to get 2 days remote. So then around that, I'm going to get 2 days remote, there's a whole new set of problems, right? It's hard enough to get meetings when I don't know who's available when. It gets an even harder. It goes from 2-dimensional to 3-dimensional chess when I don't know who's in the office or not. And then there's space issues, I'm getting fewer people in the office at any one point in time. Can I save any of that square footage or no? Because everyone wants to be out on Mondays and Fridays. So you could point to COVID and those that radical change in work relation that came out of it as a why now that triggered a bunch of startups, and it's neither technical nor regular.
You're lucky you've got a workflow management tool, and now workflows are now need to adapt pretty fast. Go find, go back to the list. And, thankfully we did that. Because, I follow, as you know, LinkedIn and all the influencers in our industry, the big boys over at Fifth Wall and Metaprop and Camber Creek. And then, of course, who are the key portfolio players and who's who, in there. So I've got my 30 or 40 that are showing up in my feed all the time. And I'm seeing a lot more venture is dead. Can you talk a little bit more, you're in this, this is where you make your money. This is where you draw all your creative juices out of. Is venture dead? And if yes, why? If not, how's it evolving?
The only thing that interests me about startups is when the solution to the problem is a quantum level different than what's out there. It has to be like 50, 100% better. It can't be like a 10%. No one changes that. And it needs to be visibly and obviously different. Like you need in like 8 seconds, I need to be, I got that. That's different. That's not what I had. And then we turn the tables around. And as a VC, I describe what I'm doing. And it's the same damn thing everyone else is doing, just with a different logo on it. Right. Hey, we're like, two smart guys, non-gender specific guys. Maybe we're exited founders. We have a great network. We can really help you at critical points in your startup's evolution, and we can make introductions for you, blah, 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 just like every other VC you've just spoken. Right? So we don't eat our own dog food. We are hypocrites about being as differentiated as the startups that we want to invest. So that's why, and you talked about this a little earlier, that's why I've always been drawn to platform-based. So one of the beauties of an accelerator is it is a visibly and obviously difference over a generic VC fund. Of course, accelerator space has become super crowded. So the way we ate our own dog food on that one was, and you went through this before, all these accelerators, we have lots of space, blah, 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 blah. And we said, Reuben, we got 2 weeks of customer sprints in the middle of the program and 2 weeks of investor sprints at the end. We're going to put you in front of 2-3 dozen potential customers who choose who they want to meet with. So they're qualified leads already. Right? Like, well, okay, we'll make a lot of introductions versus 2 to 3 dozen qualified face-to-face sit-downs. That's visibly and obviously different. And on the investor side, by the way, at Second Century Ventures, it's all about the customers too. It's like 8 months. Here are the events we go to. They're connected with the National Association of Realtors. They're funded by the National Association of Realtors. So like if you have anything that real estate agent will purchase or be your channel partner, that's a visibly and obvious difference right there. And then we had the investor sprints where it was like, hey, Reuben, like we know you're beyond the accelerator stage. You're not going to raise a seed round. Demo day is not useful to you. We have like face-to-face, one-on-one meeting with VCs who choose the startups they want to meet with. So again, qualified leads on the investor side. And so that was visibly and obviously different. Corporate venture is a platform that, if done right, also much better. Hey, so we're not just investing money. I can introduce the customer. They usually drop the ball in corporate venture for other reasons, but it is a platform and so on. So is venture dead? No. The best venture funds, like it's a virtuous cycle, right? I want to be in the best fund because it's the best signal for me as a startup. So, and then those funds end up doing better and better. But for everyone that's not in that like best, what they're hoping for is to get lucky and become one of the best. Hope is not a plan. Hope to get lucky is not a plan at all. Or they need to be thinking in terms of platforms to differentiate themselves so that the best startups who have their choice of who they want on their cap table and whose money to take will say, I need your money because you're doing something that no one else is doing.
Okay, and I've seen that with a couple of the emerging venture capital funds in the prop tech construction area. The ones that have kind of emerged of late were ones that went and sold themselves to the big boys, the Metaprops or the Fifth, as we're a good follow-along partner because we have access and tap into a very specialized LP base, right? I think you once introduced me to those guys. I think they were down in Texas who are just, their funders were all Caterpillar distributors throughout the country, right? And they all came together. So if you want to get into construction, you want to get into, potentially, mobile, autonomous vehicles, for construction and all that other stuff, I can bring something to the table. And then, you've got that specialty. If you could give one piece of practical advice, not theoretical, to a founder who's preparing for their next pitch or sprint, that's going to make a difference between the way they were yesterday, what would it be?
You got to remember that everything that you're doing in life, what is your next goal out of it, right? So if it's the elevator pitch, you want to get that guy's attention for a couple more minutes. That next discussion, the next step is you want to get into the office to present your deck. And then the next step is, as you work your way down that funnel, is to actually get the money out of the bottom of the funnel. If you're doing B2B sales, understand your sales. You're qualified, right? Once you qualified them, you're building and you're identifying all the stakeholders and building the support there. Understand what you want to get out of every stage in the meeting, right? So that you know what success looks like for that. And then get the most effective, most tailored version of that pitch to get you to that next step, right? Oh, I know what my next step is. I don't need all that stuff. I can focus right on what matters, right? And I thought you were going to say this in the very beginning. One of the other things that I've come to use a lot, and I'll thank Steve Barsh for teaching me this phrase, bottom line up front, BLUF, right? You start by answering the questions. Yes, we can do that. Or no, we don't do it that way. Here's why. If you do your bottom line up front, you know where you're going, like that will get you a significantly higher rate. Or at the very least, it'll get you to the quick no. You'll save a quick no, and you'll save a lot of time. You'll move on to someone who could potentially say it.
And then you go out and get miles, and then you go right back to work, right?
Yeah.
No, it's very milestone-based approach, and I like that a lot. So, Andrew, thank you for helping shape startups for, I don't even want to say how long, but a long time. We thank you, on behalf of the shareholders of StringBean for being part of our journey. Amazing. This is really a great experience. I know you're a busy man, and really, I was honored.
For you, anytime.